and she travelled the length and breadth of Ireland, organising opposition to the British presence in our country. She lived and toiled ceaselessly to highlight the injustice and suffering which the British state was causing in our communities. For many people, my mother's voice was the voice of resistance and the voice of justice, and it was for that reason she was murdered. Had my mother been still alive today, she would most likely have been addressing you here, but my mother is not. The forces of the British state ensured that. As her daughter, I am both proud and humbled to have been asked to chair this meeting today. On Tuesday and Wednesday of next week, the British Queen will visit the occupied 6 counties. That visit has presented us with a very unique opportunity to highlight the fact that hundreds of people of all ages met their deaths at the hands of British Crown forces and their agents in Ireland during the course of the present monarch's reign. Many more were injured or endured physical and psychological abuse by those same forces. Prisoners have been tortured and abused. Marion Price is one such victim. She is suffering from trauma created by her incarceration. The state has now tried to override this before the United Nations visit next Monday, transferring Marion to a psychiatric hospital without her informed consent. It's yet another violation of her rights. She should be released immediately. Countless families across Ireland still live with the painful reality of the tragedies, distress and anguish brought to their homes by those forces of which the British monarch is Commander-in-Chief. The unchanged nature of Britain's attitude to the families of those it murdered was highlighted last Monday. New proof in the form of official British government documents revealed how in July 1972 the state officially sanctioned the use of deadly force by its troops against Irish citizens and ensured that those crime forces would not be prosecuted. Evidence that the 1972 policy still remains a central part of current British policy was demonstrated by the revelation on Wednesday that the British government had rejected a demand by the families of the victims of the Ballymurphy and Spring Hill massacre for a public inquiry into those state murders. Those families are all here today and are very welcome. The media, the politicians, the great and the good, who prefer us to keep silent about Britain's crimes in Ireland. We refuse to be silenced. Our voices will be heard. There are a number of speakers who will address you today. All have one thing in common. They all have been members of their families murdered by British state forces or by its agents, or else they themselves have been victims of state violence. The first speaker today is Damien Donaghy, who at the age of 15 was the first person to be shot on Bloody Sunday.
Hello. I stand here as a man who was wounded on Bloody Sunday by the British Armed Forces. I stand here disgusted that so-called Irish Republicans would meet and greet a Queen who 40 years ago decorated the parish of Ireland with medals of honour for their part in the murder and attempted murder of innocent people on the streets of Derry. Furthermore, 2 years following the Savile inquiry, Dave Cleary, Soldier F, who murdered 4 and wounded 4 on Bloody Sunday and was also involved in the Ballymurphy massacre, retains his medals of honour from Lizzie Windsor. The Queen's Jubilee and future engagements in Ireland should be treated with disdain. How can Irish Republicans justify and rationalise their engagements with a supporter of murder in Ireland? Thank you.
Thank you, Damien. Next to speak is Linda Nash from Derry. Linda's brother William was one of those murdered by British paratroopers on Bloody Sunday. Her father was also shot and wounded as he tried to help his dying son.
Maura so rightly introduced me. My brother was one of those that was murdered on Bloody Sunday at the barricade, and while my father was trying to help him, British paratrooper decided they shoot him twice, and they didn't come to help him or give him any pain relief of any kind. I am here today to give reasons why I believe Mert McGuinness should not meet or greet the Queen of England, and why her Jubilee celebrations in Ireland should be shunned by all. Does Martin forget that the Queen decorated the parachute regiment? They remain decorated. Does she forget the role of the Queen's forces in Derry with the murder of innocent civilians and children such as Manus Deary, Annette McGavigan, Daniel Haggerty, and many, many more? Martin, can you sleep at night after giving orders to young Irish men and women to attack the Queen's forces when many of these young men, women and teenagers were then murdered? I hope you're happy with your newfound friend Martin, for she is the employer of the men who murdered our loved ones. Your actions in doing this is totally treacherous.
My eldest Linda. I'd like to introduce Pierce McGovern from Fermanagh. His cousin Kevin was shot dead by the RUC. Pierce is speaking on behalf of all those families from Fermanagh, as well as a number of families from 26 counties who are all represented by Fernia.
Good evening, everybody. As Maura said, my name is Pierce McGovern from Kinolly in County Fermanagh, an area which was also heavily militarised during the conflict, and the British Army was stationed all along the border in County Fermanagh. Me and my family were directly affected by state bother. My cousin Kevin was murdered in Cookstown in County Tyrone on the 29th of September 1991, and he was just out of the blue shot in the back by an RUC officer. And not alone was he shot, but his body was defiled on the streets of Cookstown for a period of time after that, and his family was abused by telephone and by interviews with RUC officers afterwards. Our family, the McGovern family, never received the truth about what happened to Kevin. To continue our family's quest for truth and justice, I am now a member of Fernia Fermanagh, and we demand truth and justice, not jubilation. Or as McGuinness might say, jubilation. Our victims' organisation totally opposes the lauded jubilation, which is now being played out to the British Army's Commander-in-Chief, the British Queen. On behalf of not just the McGovern family, but all the Fernia families, and the wider collective present here today, we at Fernia do not support a jubilation to the British Army's Commander-in-Chief, that same British Queen. Not under any circumstances, especially in the absence of Britain acknowledging his brutal and oppressive role as major protagonist throughout the conflict in Ireland. The lauding and welcoming is premature, to say the least. It is wrong, and for those adversely affected should be opposed at every level, as this is the right thing to do for all the victims we represent. The conflict in Ireland has evidenced many victims of British Army murder via collusion with other state forces, the vast majority of which still await proper investigation. Barra McGrory, listen. In addition to these murders, the British Army has been responsible for many other heinous acts, including harassment, rape, house raids, verbal abuse, threats, roadside beatings, torture and collusion along with loyalist paramilitaries. None of these war crimes have been given any sentencing, and victims are in the absence of recognition of their experiences of truth and justice. The British Army has never been properly held to account for these activities, mainly due to the fact that they were state-sponsored and established as a formal politically sanctioned tactic at the heart of British rule in Ireland. The British state forces, like the same British Army intelligence units, Peru and Special Branch, rearmed, reorganised and directed loyalist death squads, resulting in hundreds of people being murdered here. This was clearly state orchestrated murder, of which the British Queen has responsibility for. These are her troops. To this day, the British state continues to block all attempts to establish the truth about its role in the conflict. See what happened to Ballymurphy this week. But we the people will continue to demand the truth about British state murder in Ireland. The Queen is decorated, returning warmongers for their crimes in Ireland. Those British Army paratroopers who murdered on Bloody Sunday in 1972 in Derry, along with countless other regiments, were decorated with medals of Buckingham Palace. International troops continue this murderous campaign in Iraq and Afghanistan, and soon Iran. No doubt she'll also reward them with medals of bravery. In conclusion, finally I'm not ashamed to stand here in Belfast with other victims groups and comrades. We will not shirk our responsibilities for the families of British state murder in opposing the Commander-in-Chief of British Armed Forces, Elizabeth Windsor. We are not shaking hands, and we're not going cap in hand for that truth and justice. We demand it. We demand truth and justice, not jubilation.